Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Chi Xiaojun with Shijing and Lily. And well, Lily's been here to Crossover before, but Shijing's a new friend of Crossover, and you're a flight attendant.
Yes, I have been as a flight attendant for almost 5 years.
5 years now.
Yes.
Well, I mean, flight attendant.
No. Let me start that. You know, 2 hours ago, before we recorded this show, we had an 11-year-old boy around the studio.
Okay.
And he asked me, "What topic are you talking about today?" I said, "Flight attendant." And he said, "Wow, she must be really pretty. When is she arriving?" 11-year-old boy. That's true.
So that's the impression.
That's the impression for most people, right?
Exactly.
Most guys, most Chinese guys, you have fantasies about flight attendants, do you?
But talking about flight attendant, it's well educated, nice working environment,
nice looking,
very well dressed, nice looking.
Thank you.
I mean, it's
a decent income and enjoy all the duty-free shops.
Oh yes, you get to travel always and all across the world.
Yeah. But I have to say,
there is a but.
The reality is not that. I think you have to divide it, the flight attendant to two worlds.
Okay.
One is Western world. The other one is Asian world.
How different is it?
I think most people's impression of the beautiful, elegant, high income flight attendant is really mostly in Asian countries.
Okay.
And in Western countries, I think for most people who already travel to US or European, you must already seen those elder grandma flight
You're not saying they're not beautiful, right? Are you?
They are still beautiful, but the age is not that young.
Right.
Yeah. So basically, you're talking about the ages of all these flight attendants. They won't be always, I mean, young girls or young boys. But in China or in other Asian countries and on planes, you will see mostly young people.
Right.
I don't know. Is it because you have an age limit while you're recruiting flight attendants? I don't know. What is the age limit
Is there
in
an
China?
age limit?
When I was hired by my company, the age was between, I think, 25 to 30 something. I don't remember the exact age, but 35 or 38 something.
Okay. When you were hired, it was between 20 something to 30 something. But can you just work on, and when you are in your 40s, can you still be that flight attendant?
Actually, this is what we are expecting.
Okay.
We would like to work as
For
long
decades.
as we would like. Yes, like those American flight attendants, 80 years old, still doing the service.
Really? You really have 80-year-old?
You know,
still
this
flying?
is a very extreme example.
We have the picture to show you.
Right.
I think this is the flight attendant you're referring to.
This is the
70-year-old.
average. This is the average age.
Yeah, but she's like...
She's not the oldest.
Not the oldest.
No.
She has been with that airlines for like 50 years, and they just held a celebration for her, like a 50 years anniversary of flying with Continental Airlines.
I think, if my memory is correct, in my company, the number one is 84 years.
84 years old.
Still doing the service.
Oh, really?
But if we... Well, these are the flight attendants of these days. But if we go back to those old times, do you remember? Were you? And when it's the first time we saw a flight attendant?
I Googled, and I found out that it was back in 1930s. It was a nurse who raised this idea to a senior management in Boeing, I think. And because back then, many people would choose to take trains rather than airplanes because they don't feel comfortable flying in the air. And some people might think I might feel sick, and then there's no one to help me. So the nurse told that Boeing senior management and said, why don't you hire some nurses and have them serve on the plane so that people would feel more secure when they board a plane. And, you know, they feel that if I ever feel sick, there's a nurse professional to help me. So that was actually the beginning of, you know, flight stewardess. And that nurse herself actually flew for several years after that. She actually helped to set up, you know, all the other criteria, all the training courses for flight attendants.
So it's a history of about 80 years.
Yeah, right. 80 years old.
And, but what about China? The first flight attendant in China?
I think I've heard it. It was sometime in the
1950 something.
Yeah,
right?
50s, I think.
Right.
Because I've seen an old picture of those flight attendants in those military-like looking dresses.
The military dresses, right? I think it's like
uniforms. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got actually a series of pictures to show you, just to tell you the changes of these uniforms worn by the flight attendants of Chinese airlines.
Yes, we can see that back in the 50s and 60s that their uniforms are more like military uniforms than that. And it was not until like the late 70s or the beginning of the 1980s that different airline companies started to design their own flight attendant uniforms.
Fashionable, yeah.
And some of them actually hire like world famous like designers from France, from Paris to design the uniforms.
If we go back to the very beginning of this process, and when you hire someone to be the flight attendants, what are the criteria and who can be a flight attendant? Back in your case, you said your age is between like 25 to 30 something.
30 something.
What are the other standards?
Language, I guess.
Of course,
To
because
speak a
this
foreign
is
language?
a foreign airline company. The language is a basic criteria. You have to. And
How many foreign languages?
only one, English.
Okay.
Yes. And those criteria we learn is really after we got hired, because before that we don't know what company would like to have. The first interview is like 40 people in a room, and our boss was like asking some question. I don't remember what
were those questions now?
Something like,
Why do you want to be a flight attendant?
why? Yeah, why you like to be the flight attendant?
And what did you say?
Are you afraid of heights or?
And everybody, you can decide whether I like to answer this question or later another
you
one.
only choose
Oh,
one.
right.
Only one question, because
Oh,
there's so
okay.
many people in one room. You cannot answer every question,
Right. Oh.
So my question was, I think it's why.
Why do you want to become a
And did you
flight
choose
attendant?
that question?
Yes, because
And
that's the first one. I like to answer the first one. Then after that, I will relax.
And your
Okay.
answer
Right.
was, we dress
answer-
up nicely, we enjoy duty-free shops, all men have fantasies about flight
And
attendants.
we got well paid.
I will be like pass. My answer is like, I like to go and see the difference of the world, something like that, to see
You
the
get to
different
travel
people.
around the
yes.
world.
Something like this.
And now we have a little video footage to show you, and this really shows how this recruitment process is being undertaken. Let's take a look.
Wow. We didn't have those.
Well, so that was actually covered by TV news, is it? Mm-hmm. So it's a quite
It's
like a
what about this
mirroring
one?
there.
It's like a
Model.
modeling.
competition, like a beauty
Competition,
pageant or
yeah.
something.
It's like they have to go through written exams.
Right.
You have to answer the questions like on paper, and you have to answer questions in person. That's like a audition or interview.
The video we just saw, I was about to say, I think it's quite. It's a bit exaggerated. I mean, it's a recruitment of an airline company. It looks like it's choosing like the super girl or something on
Right.
TV. It's like American Idol or something.
But when you see all
weird.
these applicants, if they are talking about the thousands,
Do they have to like
and
sing a
they're
song
looking for only-
and even
Right.
dance in front of judges?
They
Do
can be
have
made into a reality
I don't
show.
think it's useful for this flight attendant job.
Okay, we'll take a short break. When we come back, more stories about Chinese flight attendants. And welcome back to Crossover. Well, we don't really know what happens in those recruitments, those auditions or interviews. But anyway, lots of people are still very interested in this industry and being a flight attendant, whether
Right.
it's a Chinese company or a foreign company. I guess we might have different ways, different criteria, a foreign company, Chinese company, but in the basics, the basic requirements are the same. They're there working in the plane, serving the passengers.
Right.
Most of the Asian airline company, the service is the most important, of course. But we have to say the Western airline company, as far as I know, they put safety.
Safety is first.
The very
Safety
top,
first.
right? Safety first. Safety is the basic for every other things.
But I guess
That's reasonable.
But I guess that doesn't really
is...
contradict the,
Right.
the first one.
Right,
Because service and safety.
But
Right.
how does it contradict? I'm sure you can give us an example.
Like, start from the boarding procedures. Some passengers get on board and they would like to stow the luggage. Because sometimes I fly some domestic airline to go home or sometimes. Those flight attendants, they have to, I don't have to say have to, but they do help the passenger to put the very, very heavy luggage to the overhead bin. But our training or some of our seniors' idea is we can assist the passenger because there are some elder passenger who really need help. We could assist, right? But it's not our responsibility because if you really do that, you might hurt yourself, and then this might be
like some potential risk when you're flying in the air.
Flight operation might be got in.
Yeah, I guess that's just different concepts behind it, different concept of service.
Well, that's interesting to know. So next time I'm flying with your airplane, I would have to put up the very heavy suitcase
Well, you
for
do
myself.
need help. They will be there to help you.
Ma'am, can I give you a hand?
She's no stronger than I am. So.
All right. Anyway, but if we go back to the requirement process, again, we have this stereotyped image of flight attendant being well paid, being working in a nice environment, at least in China. Back in the 1990s, mid-1990s, it's especially like that. Remember in 1994 in Shanghai, there was a very important event, and that was, at the time was about restructuring of Chinese industries, about these textile industry. All these factories in Shanghai, many of them were closed, and so there were lots of laid-off workers, many of them women. And there was a huge event happening in Shanghai in those years. That was in 1994. It was a recruitment event organized by the local airlines, recruiting these laid-off workers. So
comparatively older. Like flight attendants.
And that's why, because Kongjie, flight attendant in Chinese, literally it means air sisters.
Right.
And these people, these laid off workers, laid off weavers who were recruited as the flight attendants, they were called
air auntie.
Sister-in-laws. That's the Chinese way to put it, and then just to show the closeness, the intimacy.
So you have turned from the daughter to the wife of your brother, so that makes you older.
But there's one difference. When you say it's Kongjie, you give people that impression. These are the single ones, not married. But if it is sister-in-laws, these are the married ones.
Yes.
Again, back to this stereotyped image of flight attendant being all
Kongzao
single young women.
Right.
Yeah, because Kongzao sounds more like a mom. At least give people the image of a mom. I remember that I was in school back in 1994. I remember the TV news covered that whole process, and they actually did follow-up reports of those who were recruited. And I remember my mom. She was so excited. She said, "If I were 10 years younger, I would go for that. I think I'm good enough to serve on that plane."
You should say to your mom, you can go to another foreign airline company. You're
I
still
should have
young
done that.
enough.
I didn't know. I should have.
Now, these are the pictures showing all these flight attendants recruited from those laid-off workers. And many of them, they have been working for many years, since 1994, and in their 50s, and some of them are about to retire. But talk me about retiring. Is it about in the 50s, or do you get retired in the Chinese
like in your
airlines?
company, what's the retirement policy?
There's one still more than 80 still working, so I don't think there's certain
But
age
you said that's
limitation.
an extreme case.
This is number one, but after him, like number two might be 80, number three might be 79. So there are more than
So it sounds like as long as
still
your
working.
physical condition allows
right,
you to continue to
because we
work.
have to go through the annual recurrent training. If you can pass that training and you're okay, there's no reason the company fire you.
Right.
So that sounds like a
Right.
lifetime job, rather than like in
If
China,
you're
many things.
healthy enough, if
you
you're
retire at
capable
like 30
enough.
something.
Right.
Yeah.
But we'll take a short break first, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the concerns, the worries, and the happiness and the troubles these flight attendants might have when we come back. And welcome back to Crossover. We're going to continue our conversation about the life of flight attendants.
Choosing a husband, that's
Choosing a
important.
husband. Because
very important.
again, we have this stereotyped image of flight attendants living a, say, elite life.
Yeah.
But again, we've also heard about complaints from these flight attendants. Say, we don't really have our own life. It's always in the
I
plane.
understand, right.
Always working. You don't really get the chance to meet people.
Right. So the only chance to meet maybe a potential husband or boyfriend is on the plane.
Right.
Maybe that's the reason why people say, oh, flight attendant always get the elite member or business people as
yeah.
boyfriend.
That's the reason you
Might be
spend most
one of the
time
reasons,
in
because
the
I don't
air.
really know, but I guess that might be one of the reasons behind that.
Just now we've been talking about when you're going to retire. Say some, if you're capable enough, you're healthy enough, if you're fit enough, you might be working as long as you want. In some cases, maybe
If the company allows.
in the 80s, 70s, if the company
Possibly,
allows you to
yeah.
do so. I'm not quite sure about the domestic airline, because I rarely see flight attendants in those years.
I don't think
of that age.
I've seen a lot of flight attendants that looks like they're over the age of 40, even, like
But
40.
what do you do if you don't fly anymore, if you are not a flight attendant? I mean, you have to face that problem, that question of shifting to a new
You thought about that?
It's a good
profession.
question for me. I have to start thinking about that now.
Or do you plan to fly until you're 80?
Actually, sometimes the company, other departments offer open position for everybody. So someone, if they have some abilities to work like maybe sales or marketing, they may choose to try that position. But there's not like
Like if you
If
get
you
out
really-
of the
right.
aviation industry, what would you do? Have you ever thought about that?
not really.
I've read some articles about that actually. They're saying that some of the industries that most flight attendants turn into after they stop being a flight attendant, most of them would be in like hotel management or hotel servicing. That's kind of relevant to the service industry.
Service sector, okay.
Yeah, and also many of them work in the tourism industry. Because aviation,
Good idea.
flying is a very good part of the tourism section, and also, which might be a very good choice, and you have to listen carefully. Some of them become movie stars. Why? No, I'm
That's
serious.
kind of
Okay,
difficult.
I just give you one name, and every Chinese knows that Zhao Yazhi. Angie
Wow.
Chiu. She used to be a flight attendant.
Really?
Yeah.
She's an actress from Hong Kong.
Yeah, she's a very
But
famous.
we're
actress
talking
from
about
Hong
these
Kong.
rare chances. I mean, not everyone will have that opportunity to
But
be
there are some
a
great
star.
examples. We know Angie Chiu, and I heard that one of your counterparts, Miss Sally Wu from Phoenix TV, she used to work as a flight attendant as well.
It's nice to have those beautiful uniforms, well-paid packages and 10-day working arrangement for a month. That's fantastic. But when you are working, when you are in the plane, when you come across those passengers who are not so polite, who are not so cooperative, sometimes who are rude, who may raise some outrageous questions or demands, and what do you do?
Depends, I have to say. If those
Do you know Kung
passengers-
Fu? Do you have to learn Kung Fu?
Well, I do a little bit, but if those passengers' request is what we could do and it's not really related to the safety, it's okay for me at least. I could if they're really
like what? Like what kind of requirements would that be like? Like you might consider it as a little bit unreasonable, but you can still manage to cope with.
like the food is a very important part for some of the passenger during like 3 hours plane. And we have certain choices, and sometimes it's not like the choices is enough for everybody.
It's chicken or pork?
Right, chicken, pork, beef, or fish, right. So sometimes if we have run out of one of the choice, some passenger is very nice, whatever is okay. But sometimes some passenger is very picky. Must be that one we don't have. Then I can try my best to get something from business class or from my coworker, or even give up my own crew meal. That's fine, I think. Maybe he really like beef, right?
And sometimes you really have to find a good way to deal with those, when the passenger is really angry.
Right.
You cannot just start your own fire. I've heard this interesting story with one of my flight attendant friend, and they were offering, sir, would you like to have beef or fish? And the passenger answered, chicken.
That's very
beef
common.
or fish?
It's common.
It's
Chicken.
common.
All right.
No, I'm not done yet.
Okay.
He repeated chicken for the third time, and the flight attendant, she started to think for 2 seconds, and she did that. She did, okay, chicken. Opened up the overhead cabin and said chicken, and bent down, chicken. Where is chicken? I'm sorry, sir, chicken is not boarding today.
Well,
she just
she's
solved that.
smart.
Yeah, very smart.
Yeah.
A good humor way to
But
solve
what kind of
that.
trainings do you get normally as a flight attendant?
The training we got was mostly
About safety.
Right. How to operate the door in emergency mode or normal mode, and how to do the equipment on board. How to, if there really some passenger got sick, some basic like CPR, the compression.
Oh, yeah.
Those are what we got learned.
It's all about safety, but
Right.
I've got some pictures to show you. This is the picture showing the flight attendant helping the
Stretching.
passengers. I guess this is
Stretching
in the
out.
first class cabin. How to stretch themselves a little bit, relax a little
We can
bit.
do that in the studio, actually,
Right, 'cause
for sitting here for like
We
half
used
an
to
hour.
have some picture in our plane, like how to stretch out after long flight.
You have your service like that.
No, it's just like a video, pre-recorded video to show before every flight.
This is in economy class.
Yeah.
Everyone is very cooperative and everyone is doing that exercise.
And also I'm thinking like the attitudes towards passengers are quite different. I mean, judged from my own experience with a Western airline and a Chinese, or an airline that, with China, a Chinese city as one of the destinations, because every time either we fly to China or from China, the flight attendants are usually, people like you, nice, smiling, trying your best to cope with our demands. But in the US, once I took the plane, it was a very special day because the previous day was heavy snow, so all the flights were canceled. So the next day, the flight was 100% full.
Right.
So when we boarded the plane, the flight attendants tell us, would you please keep your coat, because that was in winter time. So would you please all keep your own coat on your own seat, because we don't have any room
Overheading, it's all
right,
full,
we don't have
right?
any room there. But anyway, I think this gentleman, he actually made several attempts to try to squeeze his coat in the overhead cabin. I don't know what's his problem, but he must have tried many times because the flight attendant already remembered his name. And just as the flight attendant turned around, she's like 40-something, strong, loud voice, American flight attendant. She turned around and she turned back swiftly in like 2 seconds, as if she had eyes on her back, because that gentleman was up again, trying to sneakily squeeze his jacket in. And it was so dramatic. They were like 20 meters away from each other, and the flight attendant only said 3 words, Mr. Who and Who, no.
Whoa.
It was so dramatic.
So
The whole thing started out laughing. It was so funny.
It was a Chinese flight attendant. She may just be so helpful to find the spaces either in business class or in some
So
places.
these are the different
to
concepts.
fit in.
Yeah.
Different concepts of serving.
Right.
Different serving philosophy.
Right.
Right. And also, I've heard that like a few days ago in JetBlue, this flight attendant got in a fight with a passenger. They changed some F words. Anyway,
heard
and
this.
have you heard about it?
It was on the news, right?
Yeah. He actually fled the plane through an emergency
No, actually,
chute, right?
the flight attendant was making a PA through the PA system.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
the announcement system to say something back to that passenger.
Yeah, yeah.
Then after the PA was finished, he just opened the door in emergency mode. So the slide.
Was the plane taxing at the time?
Yeah, it was still taxing.
It was taxing.
Yeah,
to
it
the
was still
gate.
taxing. It was
Then
like a slightly
the slide was
chute, right?
right chute.
He was in big
was.
trouble.
Yeah. So he must have thought, what would you do if you're so mad? How would you control your temper?
Well, I could control in many ways. I may think, well, this passenger might got something unhappy, or I may think, okay, next time don't let me see you again on my plane because we are still taxiing to the gate. I don't have any service to do. It's just kidding. But I will definitely not open the door.
Right. That's
just
so irrational,
crazy, right?
But I guess it comes back to the different philosophies of serving, say, domestic airlines or Chinese airlines. We are concentrating a lot on service.
Service,
Right.
right.
At the same time, I guess they also pay a lot of attention to